Hi, my name is Amanda Smith, and my research project is on the characteristics of effective teachers. This is a very important topic, and as I surveyed the literature, I found there are a lot of controversial subjects surrounding the characteristics of effective teachers. One idea is how do we measure an effective teacher, or who is an effective teacher? And I think this really came into light in the literature with the No Child Left Behind Act in 2002, when schools were held accountable based on test scores for funding. And it just really opened up a lot of controversy surrounding the question, are test scores the way to determine if a teacher is effective, or if a school is effective, or a state or a district? And in the last 15 years, there's been a lot of emphasis on this topic. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation even spent $45 million on a project called Measures of Effective Teaching. And that was a research project where over 3,000 teachers were voluntarily interviewed, classroom observations were recorded, and that data set had been studied extensively. And there are several books, many studies, with conclusions of some of those studies. So in the research, there are a few different ways that we look at methods of measuring student achievement and teacher effectiveness. One way is to look based at student outcomes. So this would be an assessment-based method. Also, teachers can be observed and evaluated. So that would be a classroom observation or a teaching observation. Surveys are sometimes given to students or even coworkers, administrators. So the perspective of the student is also a very important way of determining how effective a teacher is. And in the literature, you'll find case studies that go over, snapshots of teachers who have had great success, and some of those ideas of what makes them successful are really brought out. So the first way to think about student assessments is you could often the assessment is grouped into like an end of year test. So that is one way to look at achievement, is just raw test scores. But in the literature, most researchers use value added models. And what that is an assessment based on student progress. So you would look at the student's final test score and then take into consider the score from the year before for that particular student, and really measure growth, and also take into account other variables. These are very controversial methods of evaluating effectiveness of teachers and of schools, because they're often labeled high stakes value added model scores, because the numbers may affect teachers' pay, promotion, also funding for certain groups. So it's really an interesting way to look at teacher effectiveness. The other way to look at an effective teacher, or evaluate an effective teacher, is through observation. So the first method I found is the classroom assessment scoring system that seems to be throughout the literature, and that was developed at the University of Virginia, but you can see the website where it's now marketed. And this observation method has three major domains: emotional support, classroom evaluation, and instructional support, where the teacher is graded in each of those by raters who are trained to watch the video and then come up with a score for each teacher. Also, you've heard of the framework for teaching, and everyone is very familiar with that. The Danielson framework has been updated. I have the updated link on this page. And so I use the domains that are on that website. First is planning and preparation, learning environments, learning experiences, and principal teaching. And then each of those domains has subdomains and a rubric for each of those for a very thorough teacher evaluation. Then you have the survey or perspectives-based methods. This survey, the Tripod 7Cs framework, is a survey of students and is used to evaluate teachers' effectiveness. This survey has three main categories. However, you can see the subcategories. I'll start with the letter C. So the first main category, personal support, and there you'd see care and confer. The second category, curricular support, where a teacher is evaluated based on his or her ability to captivate, clarify, consolidate. And the third category is academic press, where you have challenge and classroom management. In my paper, I went through some results of some of the most interesting studies I found that really honed in on the search for the characteristics of an effective teacher. Now, this particular study is Sandilos et al. 2019 looked at elementary and middle school students in the MET project, and you can see that three methods were employed: the class system, the class observation, the Danielson framework, and also the tripod survey. And here the results show that classroom management was very, very important in all of the grades surveyed. Another study, Shoemaker 2020, looked at latent classes of Algebra 1 teachers in the MET data and found that classroom management and teacher-promoted understanding were two characteristics that were linked to higher value-added model scores using the Danielson framework and the class observation system also. Another study by Sandilos and colleagues, 2016, tested the warm demander pedagogy, where African American students are often said that respond well to a warm, demanding teacher. And so the study used the MET data with the tripod survey and found that challenge and control were very important in relation to student growth and to those value-added model scores. However, there weren't any inferences to be made concerning warmth and high scores. And it's also very interesting in that study that nothing also could be linked to race in the classes and a warm demander pedagogy. In another study, Rezic and colleagues, 2015, the value-added scores were linked to motivation. So instead of measuring achievement solely, they were testing to see if the scores showed an increase in motivation, and they did find a positive correlation, which begs the question: how do teachers influence the mastery approach goals, especially of the 7th graders in this study? Another study looked at personality characteristics of first-year teachers and found that of the big 5 personality characteristics, conscientiousness was linked to higher value-added scores and also higher evaluation ratings in first-year teachers. There's a case study of National Teachers of the Year that I read through that basically looked at written statements of national teachers, national awarded teachers that have been distinguished and have developed their own statement. And these 4 themes were pulled out. The first one is the teachers stated that they were engaged in differentiating and authenticating curriculum. They're making the curriculum really tailored to each student. The teachers were very interested in the power of relationships in the classroom. Also, these teachers pointed out the collaboration with parents and others who are involved in the student's life, as well as community engagement, are very important. And they also pointed to continuous professional development as a theme that pervades through the years in award-winning teachers. And lastly, experience. One review, Keeney and Podolsky, 2016, found that experience was positively linked to teacher effectiveness, and that teachers become more effective with more experience as they progress. At first in their career, the curve is very steep, but teachers do continue to be effective into the second decade, sometimes the third decade of teaching. My conclusions after going through the literature was that assessment-based growth is very important, that those value-added scores were a great indicator of progress over time, but an effective teacher had to be qualified on other characteristics as well. And there are three main characteristics that really stood out throughout the literature and also the case studies observations. The first one was successful classroom management. The one important aspect in almost every study that I read was classroom management. Also, students or teachers were successful and effective when they motivated students. And lastly, the effective teacher that really left a mark on lives was the teacher that established relationships that promoted growth in the students. Well, thank you very much.